In this video, we will find out the origins of vampires and werewolves in mythology. We will make a journey through Slavic, Greek, and Norse mythologies. Without further ado, let's get started. Originally, the vampires were called Upir, which was the first version of them created in Slavic mythology. Some of the older features survive to this day, like driving a stake through their hearts in their grave to kill them. They were believed to be the rising dead, caused by natural deaths or improper burials, not as well groomed as we see them today, but rather moving along in whatever they were buried in, preying on people to drink their blood with a full set of teeth, rather than the two fangs we see these days. They had the ability to shift their forms from human to animal, often a bat with red eyes. They were never described as gentle, but rather vicious and hungry creatures that had the capacity to rip your throat out and mutilate your body. Before we move on to the werewolves, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are interested to watch more mythology videos. It's unclear exactly when and where the werewolf legend originated. Some scholars believe the werewolf made its debut in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the epic poem of ancient Mesopotamia. Werewolves made another early appearance in Greek mythology with the legend of Lycaon. According to the legend, Lycaon, the son of Pelasgus, angered the god Zeus when he served him a meal made from the remains of a sacrificed boy. As punishment, the enraged Zeus turned Lycaon and his sons into wolves. Werewolves also emerged in early Nordic folklore. The saga of the Volsungs tells the story of a father and son who discovered wolf pelts that had the power to turn people into wolves for 10 days. The father-son duo donned the pelts, transformed into wolves, and went on a killing rampage in the forest. Their rampage ended when the father attacked his son, causing a lethal wound. The son only survived because a kind raven gave the father a leaf with healing powers. Would you rather be a vampire or a werewolf, and why? And who do you think would win a fight between vampires and werewolves? Let me know in the comments below.
These are the Norns, and these are the Moirai. Or are these the Moirai and these the Norns? I think we can find out until the end of this video. And now let's jump into it. The Norns in Norse mythology are three sisters, whose names are Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, and they are personifications of the past, present, and future. Their principal occupation is to weave the web of fate, to sprinkle daily the sacred tree Yggdrasil with water from the Urdar fountain, and to put fresh clay around its roots, that it might remain fresh and evergreen. And the Moirai in Greek mythology are three sisters called Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. They are daughters of Nyx, the goddess and personification of the night, and the power which they wield over the fate of man is significantly indicated under the figure of a thread, which they spin out for the life of each human being from his birth to the grave, but this occupation they divide between them. Clotho winds the flax round the distaff, ready for her sister Lachesis, who spins out the thread of life, which Atropos with her scissors relentlessly snaps apart when the life of an individual is about to terminate. Another task for the Norns is to feed and tenderly care for two swans which swim over the mirror-like surface of the Urdar fountain, and from this pair of birds, all the swans on Earth are supposed to be descended. On the other hand, the Moirai assist the Graces to conduct Persephone to the upper world at her periodical reunion with her mother Demeter. They also appear in company with Eileithyia, the goddess of birth. It is also a function of the Moirai to indicate to the Erinyes the precise torture which the wicked should undergo for their crimes. The Norns are visited daily by the gods, who love to consult them, and even Odin himself frequently rides down to the Urdar fountain to bespeak their aid, for they generally answer his questions, maintaining silence only about his own fate and that of his fellow gods. In Greek mythology, even the gods have to submit themselves to the Moirai's cruel decrees. The Norns are frequently depicted as sitting on the roots of Yggdrasil and engage inside the complex paintings of weaving the future. And they are represented as sisters of different ages, Aeamed characters. Urd appearing very old and decrepit, continually looking backward, as if absorbed in contemplating past events and people. Verdandi, the second sister, young, active and fearless, looked straight before her, while Skuld, the type of the future, was generally represented as closely veiled, with head turned in the direction opposite to where Urd is gazing, and holding a book or scroll which had not yet been opened or unrolled. The Moirai are represented by the poets as stern, inexorable female divinities, aged, hideous and also lame, which is evidently meant to indicate the slow and halting march of destiny which they control. Painters and sculptors, on the other hand, depict them as beautiful maidens of a grave but kindly aspect. Now that we have seen all this information, what do you think? Which are the Norns and which the Moirai? Let us know in the comments below. We cannot be sure how the Norns or the Moirai look like, but we do know one thing for sure. They have an effect on extends beyond individual lives to encompass the future of worlds, gods, and the whole cosmos, making them crucial figures in Norse and Greek cosmology respectively.
In this video, we will see 4 terrifying mythical creatures from Asia. Are you ready? Let's get into it.
Ushioni, Japan.
The Ushioni, which means ox demon in Japanese, is a water-dwelling spider-like monster. The Ushioni has the head of an ox with a spider-like body, 6 legs with long claws, 2 sharp horns, and a mouthful of fangs. It lives near bodies of water, waiting to feed on human flesh.
Manananggal, Philippines.
The Manananggal is a female creature whose torso splits in half. This vampira creature grows bat wings after splitting in half, allowing her torso to fly through the night, hunting for unborn children. The Manananggal lands on the roofs of homes, dropping her needle-like tongue into the belly of sleeping pregnant women. Before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel.
Baize, China.
The Baize is a creature with the head of a man and body of an ox. The Baize appears in front of virtuous leaders with 3 eyes on each flank and horns along its back. Although this creature is frightening to look at, it's said to have taught the Yellow Emperor how to avoid and overcome all kinds of demons and evil supernatural creatures.
Gashadokuro, Japan.
The Gashadokuro is invisible, invincible, and bloodthirsty. The Gashadokuro is a giant skeleton made of the bones of people who had died from famine or war and had not been buried. In search for revenge for the dishonored souls of those who died, the Gashadokuro cuts off the heads of travelers to drink their blood. Which of the 4 creatures do you think is the most terrifying? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next videos.
Goblins, often depicted as mischievous and grotesque creatures, have long been a part of mythology and fantasy tales. Goblins are mythical creatures that have been a part of folklore and legend for centuries. They are often depicted as small, mischievous beings that cause trouble for humans. While their appearance and behavior may vary across different cultures, goblins are generally characterized by their diminutive size, pointy ears, and unpleasant nature. In many European folk tales, goblins are portrayed as ugly and malicious creatures that live underground or in secluded areas like forests or swamps. They are typically described as having green skin, long fingers, and an exaggerated nose. In some cultures, goblins are associated with mining and metalworking. They are said to live deep within mines and caves, where they work tirelessly to extract precious minerals and metals. In these stories, goblins are depicted as skilled craftsmen, but they are also known to be greedy and possessive of their treasures. The origin of the term goblin is uncertain, but it is believed to have derived from the Middle English word gobelin, or the Latin word gobelinus. In early medieval folklore, goblins were often depicted as malevolent spirits or supernatural beings that caused harm to humans. However, over time, their appearance and characteristics evolved to resemble more of a small humanoid creature. Despite their mischievous behavior, goblins are often portrayed as cowardly and easily frightened. They are known for their quick reflexes and ability to disappear into the shadows when threatened. However, in some stories, goblins are portrayed as fierce warriors, willing to fight to the death to protect their treasure or territory. While some goblins are said to be harmless pranksters, others are known to be violent and vicious, often attacking humans or stealing from them. In popular culture, goblins have been featured in various forms of media, including literature, film, and video games. They are often depicted as villains, such as in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, where the Goblin King and his minions are the primary antagonists. In the Harry Potter series, goblins are portrayed as skilled bankers and craftsmen, but also hold a deep resentment towards humans. Goblins are a fascinating and diverse group of mythical creatures, with roots in folklore and mythology across Europe and North America. They are known for their mischievous behavior and love of treasure, as well as their association with witchcraft and dark magic. While goblins have evolved over time to take on different characteristics and behaviors, they remain a popular and integral part of fantasy and folklore today.
Seven facts you probably didn't know about Greek mythology. Fact number 1. Medusa wasn't the only woman in Greek mythology with snakes for hair.
When you think of Medusa, you immediately picture her horrific hair made of snakes. However, Medusa is wrongly singled out as being the only woman in Greek mythology to look like this. Don't forget that Medusa was merely the only mortal of the three Gorgon sisters. The other two sisters, Stheno and Euryale, also had reptilian locks.
Fact number 2. Pandora is the grandmother of mankind.
Pandora is often mentioned in reference to the infamous box. However, Pandora is actually the grandmother of the human race. It's not really discussed often. However, Pandora was the wife of Epimetheus and mother to a mortal daughter, Pyrrha. When Pyrrha married Deucalion, the gods sent a massive flood to destroy the earth and the mortals. However, Pyrrha and Deucalion managed to survive, and after seeking help from the oracle at Delphi, were told to cast the bones of their mother to the ground so that the world would be repopulated. According to the ancient poet Ovid, they correctly presumed that the oracle meant the bones of Mother Earth, so they threw rocks behind them, successfully repopulating the Earth.
Fact number 3. Theseus was a bit of a jerk.
Despite his reputation for slaying the Minotaur in Crete and managing the difficult exit of the labyrinth, which cost numerous lives, Theseus also had a tendency to make decisions based on what best served him at the moment. An example is when he took the princess Ariadne from her home on Crete with him when he left the island only to later abandon her on the island of Naxos. Also, according to Plutarch, upon founding today's Greek capital of Athens, he took it upon himself to populate the city by raping women. However, in Plato's Republic, Socrates warns about not believing that Theseus raped or kidnapped women to populate Athens, indicating that there were various interpretations of the myth.
Fact number 4. Artemis held a grudge and would kill over it.
The goddess of hunting is known for her shrewd skills and being the protector of animals. However, while she is known as the goddess of childbirth in Greek mythology, she is also the destroyer of many young women. In fact, she killed 6 of Niobe's daughters for insulting her mother, Leo. Clearly, you didn't want to get on her bad side.
Fact number 5. Ares had a soft side in Greek mythology.
Apparently, the god of war had a soft spot. His sister Athena, the goddess of war. Ares obeyed his sister's orders, as she was also the goddess of defense and righteous battle. This can be seen in the Iliad, when Athena often intervenes to ensure a fair battle, and Ares always bows to her command.
Fact number 6. There is one main mother to the many monsters in Greek mythology.
There might be many monsters in Greek mythology. However, most of them share the same mother, Echidna. She was a relative of Medusa and the wife of Typhon, who happened to be a 100-headed dragon. Together, they spawned many of the most terrifying and famous monsters of Greek mythology, such as the Nemean lion, Cerberus, Hydra, and Ladon. She was also mother of the Chimera, the Sphinx, Scylla, the Colchian dragon, and the eagle that ate Prometheus's liver every day for an eternity as punishment.
Fact number 7. The goddess Aphrodite showed as a warrior.
The goddess of love and beauty had a hidden side due to her romantic relations with Ares, the god of war. She bore 3 children from Ares, Eros, Phobos, and Deimos. Surprisingly, there were therefore several statues and other depictions of her found in many port cities, showing Aphrodite armed and in armor, something you wouldn't expect from the goddess of love in Greek mythology.
Ambrosia is considered the food of the gods, and it is believed to convey longevity, if not outright immortality, to those who consume it. This substance has been described as both a beverage and a food, and has been used as a perfume as well as a salve. In classical Greek mythology, the gods consume ambrosia. It is occasionally also given to their favorite mortals. One example is Heracles, who was given ambrosia by Athena so to gain immortality. Another one is Tantalus, who after tasting ambrosia himself, he attempted to steal some to give to other mortals. And guess what? He was punished by the gods. When ambrosia is applied over a mortal's corpse, it prevents the body from decomposing. Ancient Greek authors differ as to whether ambrosia grants immortality or simply prevents the gods from aging. Although ambrosia has been said to exude up from the earth, Zeus receives ambrosia from doves who carry it to him from a place beyond the clashing rocks. Because the gods consume ambrosia almost exclusively, they do not have blood in their bodies, but rather a type of immortal fluid called ichor.
In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except taxes and death. The same applies to Greek mythology, with some exceptions, of course, as there is immortality in Greek mythology too. And therefore, as it's expected, there is a god of death. No, it's not Hades. Hades rules the underworld and is therefore most often associated with death and feared by men. But he is not death itself. It is Thanatos, son of Nyx and Erebus, who is the primordial god and actual personification of death. His touch was gentle, likened to that of his twin brother Hypnos, the god and personification of sleep. Their dwelling is in the realm of shades, and when they appear among mortals, Thanatos is feared and hated as the enemy of mankind, whose hard heart knows no pity, whilst his brother Hypnos is universally loved and welcomed as their kindest and most beneficent friend. But though the ancients regarded Thanatos as a gloomy and mournful divinity, they did not represent him with any exterior repulsiveness. On the contrary, he appears as a beautiful youth who holds in his hand an inverted torch, emblematical of the light of life being extinguished, whilst his disengaged arm is thrown lovingly round the shoulder of his brother Hypnos. Thanatos plays a prominent role in two myths. Once, when he was sent to fetch Alcestis to the underworld, he was driven off by Heracles in a fight. Another time, he was captured by the criminal Sisyphus, who trapped him in a sack so as to avoid death.
You may have seen a statue located in Rome, a statue of the she-wolf suckling two twin boys. This statue has been a symbol of Rome since ancient times and one of the most recognizable icons of ancient mythology. Soccer fans may recognize it by the emblem of AS Roma, the Italian professional soccer team based in Rome. Who are these twin brothers, and how are they connected with the foundation of Rome? Let's find out. Many historians think that the Etruscans from north of the Tiber conquered the area around Rome in the 6th century BC, and that they may have provided the impetus for the development of the early city. However, tradition has it that Rome was founded in 753 BC by a man named Romulus. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. The story tells how Numitor, king of Alba Longa, a town southeast of Rome, is overthrown by his younger brother Amulius. Rhea Silvia, Numitor's only child, is forced by Amulius to become a Vestal virgin, but is seduced by the great god Mars and gives birth to twin boys. Amulius immediately orders that they be drowned in the Tiber, but the basket in which they are abandoned floats away, coming to rest at the future site of Rome. A wolf suckles the children until they are found by the shepherd Faustulus. Romulus and Remus grow up to lead a gang of bandits. When Remus is taken prisoner and dragged before the king, Romulus hastens to his rescue, kills Amulius, and restores Numitor to his throne. The young men decide to start a city of their own at the place where they had been found by the shepherd. Through Auspicium, they seek the advice of the gods as to which of them should be the founder. Auspicium was a means of determining the will of the gods by observing the flight and sometimes the eating habits of birds. It was usually overseen by augurs, men who learned secret rules which were said to enable them to discern the meaning behind the bird's behavior. Remus is the first to see an omen, 6 vultures. Romulus sees 12 vultures. A dispute breaks out as to which of them has won. Romulus kills Remus and gives his name to the new city. This story of the founding of Rome, the Eternal City, is the best known, but it is not the only one. Write in the comments below if you like this story and if you knew it. Also comment if you have visited Rome and if you know any other stories of its foundation. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next videos.
In this video, we will see the connection of the Olympic Games with Greek mythology. No, their name is not derived from Olympus, but Olympia, an ancient town still existing in Greece. Sports fans already know that the Olympic flame is lit at Olympia several months before the Olympic Games, then travels to the city that hosts the Games and continues to burn in the cauldron for the duration of the Games. Gods, goddesses, and the stories connected with them played an important role in the life of ancient Greeks. Many daily rituals and ceremonies would have been carried out in their name, and significant buildings, landmarks, and events might be ascribed to the gods. Olympia was no exception, and a number of myths are connected with how the Olympic Games started there. Many Greek gods and heroes competed in the first Games at Olympia. Zeus wrestled his father, Kronos, for the throne. Apollo outran Hermes and beat Ares at boxing. And Heracles, often credited with founding the Olympic Games, won victories in wrestling and the pancration, a no-holds-barred combat sport. Now let's see 4 different versions of myths of who started the Olympic Games and how.
Eideos Dactylos Heracles.
The oldest myth about how the Olympic Games began concerns Eideos Dactylos Heracles. The Dactylos or dactyls were a mythical race of beings who originated in Crete. They were associated with metalworking and were said to have taught maths and the alphabet to men. According to the myth, the leader of these dactyls, Heracles, founded the Olympic Games in the age of Kronos.
Zeus.
There are several myths connecting Zeus with the founding of the Olympic Games. This is not surprising, as the site of Olympia was dedicated to him, and one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, which was sadly destroyed, statue of Zeus was also here. Again, there is a connection with Crete, and also Kronos. After leaving his hiding place on Crete, Zeus fought against his father Kronos on this spot in the Peloponnese. After defeating him, he declared that there should be games in his honor held here every 4 years. Before we move on to the other 2 myths, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more mythology videos.
Heracles.
You might more commonly know him as Hercules now. A demigod, he performed a series of labors to atone for his sins, which were brought on by blind rage. One of those labors was to clean the stables of King Augeas. This might not sound a very difficult task, but the stables held thousands of animals and had not been cleaned in many years. Heracles neatly solved the problem by diverting 2 rivers, which washed away all the muck, leaving the stables like new. King Augeas, however, was not pleased when he discovered that Heracles was performing the task as one of his labors and refused to pay the reward. Even when his own son came to testify before a judge that the king had promised to pay the reward, King Augeas refused and banished both his son and Heracles from his kingdom. Heracles later returned, and with the help of Zeus, overthrew the king. He then dedicated the Olympic Games in honor of Zeus, who had helped him.
King Oenomaus and Hippodamia.
King Oenomaus lived in fear of a prophecy that said that if his daughter Hippodamia would be married, he would then be killed by his son-in-law. To prevent this from happening, he demanded that all of Hippodamia's suitors should challenge him to a chariot race. If they won, they could marry his daughter, but if they lost, they would be killed. Whilst many suitors tried their luck, What they didn't realize was King Enemeus had an ace up his sleeve. His horses were given to him by Ares, the god of war. He could easily win every time. Later, King Pelops came to try his luck. Hippodamia fell in love with him at first sight and decided to help Pelops to win. They conspired to sabotage the king's chariot by loosening one of the bolts that attached the wheels, and then the race began. Although it was close at first, eventually the king's wheel fell off and he was killed in the accident. This meant that Pelops and Hippodamia could be married, fulfilling the prophecy. The games were then held every 4 years in honor of his victory. Are you an Olympic Games fan? Have you ever watched the games? Which one of the 4 myths did you like the most? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next videos.
In a small cottage outside a little town in the kingdom of Lydia, there dwelt a merchant and craftsman called Idmon. His wife had died giving birth to a girl, Arachne. Idmon was as proud of Arachne as ever father was of daughter, for since her early childhood, she had shown the most extraordinary skill as a weaver. Spinning and weaving were naturally of great importance in those days. From the very first, Arachne's skill at the loom was the talk and pride of all Lydia. Admirers crowded Idmon's cottage to watch her at work, and the onlookers declared her without equal. Arachne understood that she had been given a gift and was not one to claim personal credit for it. One afternoon, going down at her work, murmured that she is a better weaver than Athena, the weaver of the Olympian gods. The news soon got back to Athena. If you liked the video, hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more mythology videos. A week or so later, the usual crowd gathered round Arachne, who sat at the loom. An old woman arrived and wanted to see Arachne's work. The old woman said that a mortal could not do such work, and surely Athena herself had a hand in this. But Arachne replied that Athena could not do anything half so fine. Suddenly, the old woman transformed into Athena herself. Arachne kept her composure and told the goddess that she had no wish to offend, but she truly believed that as an artist of the loom, she had no rival on Earth or on Olympus. Athena, who started to lose her calm, challenged Arachne to a competition. Athena started first, and she brought to life the glory of the gods themselves, and then she created panels that showed the price paid by mortals for daring themselves as equals or superiors to the gods. Finally, the goddess adorned the border of her work with designs of olive, the tree holy to her. All the crowd applauded, except for Arachne. Then it was Arachne's turn to weave. She created a humiliating portrayal of the gods, drunk and trying to take deceitful advantage of mortal women. And she completed her work by weaving around ivy leaves. The onlookers were fascinated and disturbed. Athena came forward and examined every inch of the surface and could see no flaw. It was perfect but sacrilegious and impermissible. Athena ripped the web and hit Arachne. Arachne, in pain, understood what she had done, and afraid that she could no longer be permitted to weave, she hanged herself. But Athena was touched by the girl's love for weaving. The goddess could not let a talent like this die, so she transformed Arachne into a spider, so she would weave all her days. And that's how the first arachnid came into being. Do you think Arachne had a fair treatment by Athena? And do you think the transformation of Arachne into a spider is a punishment or a reward? A reward for a great artist. The right to weave masterpieces forever. Let me know in the comments.
Kronos was a titan and king of the gods. He was also father and consumer of the Olympian gods. Rhea was wife of Kronos and mother of the Olympian gods. Kronos attacked his father Ouranos with the sickle, castrating him and casting his testicles into the sea. The testicles produced a white foam from which the goddess of love and beauty Aphrodite emerged. The children of Kronos and Rhea are Demeter, who is the goddess of fertility and the harvest; Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, home and hospitality; Hera, the queen of the gods; Poseidon, the god of the sea; Hades, the god of the underworld; and Zeus, the king of the gods. Hades is not technically an Olympian, as he spends all his time in the underworld. Rhea concealed the existence of Zeus from Kronos so that he could overthrow his father and free his siblings, as he did and became the king of the gods. Zeus and Leto gave birth to Apollo, the god of harmony, and Artemis, the goddess of hunting. Zeus and Maia gave birth to Hermes, the messenger of the gods. Zeus and Hera gave birth to Ares, the god of war. Hephaestus, the god of fire and blacksmiths, was either the son of Zeus and Hera or he was Hera's parthenogynous child. According to Hesiod, Hera gave birth to Hephaestus on her own as revenge for Zeus giving birth to Athena without her. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, sprang fully grown out of her father's head as Zeus had swallowed her mother Metis whole before she could give birth. Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy, is considered an Olympian too, and he is the son of Zeus and Semele.
Daedalus was the architect who had contrived the labyrinth for the Minotaur in Crete, and who showed Ariadne how Theseus could escape from it. When King Minos learned that the Athenians had found their way out, he was convinced that they could have done so only if Daedalus had helped them. Accordingly, he imprisoned him and his son Icarus in the labyrinth, certainly a proof that it was excellently devised, since not even the maker of it could discover the exit without a clue. But the great inventor was not at a loss. He told his son, "Escape may be checked by water and land, but the air and the sky are free," and he made 2 pairs of wings for them. They put them on, and just before they took flight, Daedalus warned Icarus to keep a middle course over the sea. If he flew too high, the sun might melt the glue and the wings drop off. However, what elders say youth disregards. As the two flew lightly and without effort away from Crete, the delight of this new and wonderful power went to the boy's head. He soared exultingly up and up, paying no heed to his father's anguished commands. Then he fell. The wings had come off. He dropped into the sea and the waters closed over him. The afflicted father flew safely to Sicily, where he was received kindly by the king. Minos was enraged at his escape and determined to find him. He made a cunning plan. He had it proclaimed everywhere that a great reward would be given to whoever could pass a thread through an intricately spiraled shell. Daedalus told the Sicilian king that he could do it. He bored a small hole in the closed end of the shell, fastened a thread to an ant, introduced the ant into the hole, and then closed it. When the ant finally came out at the other end, the thread, of course, was running clear through all the twists and turns.
Ceyx, a king in Thessaly, was the son of Hyasphoros, the light-bearer. His wife Alcyone was also of high descent. She was the daughter of Aeolus, king of the winds. The two loved each other devotedly and were never willingly apart. Nevertheless, a time came when he decided he must leave her and make a long journey across the sea. When Alcyone learned what he was planning, she was overwhelmed with grief and terror. She told him with streaming tears and in a voice broken with sobs that she knew as few others the power of the winds upon the sea. In her father's palace she had watched them from her childhood, their stormy meetings, the black clouds and the wild red lightning, but she had to yield and let him go alone. She waited on the shore watching the ship until it sailed out of sight. That very night a fierce storm broke over the sea. The winds all met in a mad hurricane, and the waves rose up mountain high. The men on the quivering, battered boat were mad with terror, all except one who thought only of Alcyone and rejoiced that she was in safety. Her name was on his lips when the ship sank and the waters closed over him. Alcyone was counting off the days. She kept herself busy, weaving a robe for him against his return and another for herself to be lovely in when he first saw her. And many times each day she prayed to the gods for him, to Hera most of all. The goddess was touched by those prayers for one who had long been dead. She summoned her messenger Iris and ordered her to go to the house of Hypnos, god of sleep, and bid him send a dream to Alcyone to tell her the truth about Ceyx. The abode of sleep is near the black country of the Cimmerians, in a deep valley where the sun never shines and dusky twilight wraps all things in shadows. There came Iris in her cloak of many colors, trailing across the sky in a rainbow curve, and the dark house was lit up with the shining of her garments. Even so, it was hard for her to make the god open his heavy eyes and understand what he was required to do. The old god of sleep aroused his son, Morpheus, skilled in assuming the form of any and every human being, and he gave him Hera's orders. On noiseless wings Morpheus flew through the darkness and stood by Alcyone's bed. He had taken on the face and form of Ceyx drowned. She woke to the conviction that her husband was dead, that what she had seen was no dream, but himself. With the first daylight she went to the shore, to the headland where she had stood to watch him sail away. As she gazed seaward, far off on the water she saw something floating. It was he, Ceyx, her husband. She ran and leaped into the water, crying, and then, instead of sinking into the waves she was flying over them. She had wings, her body was covered with feathers. She had been changed into a bird. The gods were kind, they did the same to Ceyx. As she flew to the body it was gone, and changed into a bird like herself, and joined her. But their love was unchanged. They are always seen together, flying or riding the waves.
There was once an intensely attractive young princess called Caronis who came from the Thessalian kingdom of Phlegiantus. So great was her beauty that she caught the attention of the god Apollo, who took her as a lover. You might think that the companionship and love of one of the most beautiful of the gods would be enough for anyone, but Caronis, while pregnant with Apollo's child, fell for the charms of a mortal called Ischys and slept with him. And that's how the story of Aesclepius, the Greek god of medicine, began. One of Apollo's white crows witnessed this act of betrayal and flew back to tell his master all about the insult to his honor. Enraged, Apollo asked his sister Artemis to take revenge. Artemis attacked the palace at Phlegiantis with plague arrows and poison darts that spread a terrible disease throughout the kingdom. Many besides Coronis were infected.
She's dying, my lord. Dying.
Did she say anything? Did she admit her guilt?
Oh yes, I deserve my fate, she said. Tell the great god Apollo that I ask no forgiveness and beg no pity, only save the life of our child.
With such malicious glee did the crow crow that Apollo lost his temper and turned it black. All crows, ravens and rooks ever since have been that color. When Apollo, now filled with remorse, reached plague-stricken Phlegiantis, he found Coronis lying dead on her funeral pyre, the flames licking all round her. With a cry of grief he leapt through the flames and from her womb cut out their child who was still living. The rescued infant boy, whom Apollo named Aesclepius, was put in the care of the centaur Chiron. It quickly became clear to Chiron that he allied an incisive, logical and curious mind with a natural gift for healing. Chiron, a naturalist, herbalist and reasoner himself, took enormous pleasure in training the boy in the medical arts. By the time he was 20, Aesclepius had mastered all the arts of surgery and medicine. He married Epione. Together they had 3 sons and 4 daughters. Aesclepius trained his girls as rigorously as Chiron had trained him. Sometime Aesclepius relieved the suffering of a bruised snake by the application of an ointment of his own devising. This case proved to be invaluable, for the grateful serpent had licked Aesclepius's ear in thanks, whispering as he did so many secrets of the arts of healing that were closed even to Chiron. Athena, to whom snakes were sacred, bestowed her thanks too, in the form of a jar of Gorgon's blood. You might think this a poor gift. Far from it. A single drop of the silvery gold ichor that keeps the gods immortal is fatal for humans to touch or taste. The blood of a creature as deadly and dangerous as a serpent-haired Gorgon, on the other hand, has the power to bring the dead back to life. Aesclepius used the Gorgon's blood once to revive the corpse of a dead patient, then a second time, and soon he was using it as liberally and regularly as oil. Hades began to grumble and fume. Unable to bear it any longer, he went so far as to leave the underworld and stand angrily before the throne of his brother Zeus.
This man is denying me souls. He pulls them back from death just as they are ready to cross over to us. Something must be done.
I agree. He is subverting the proper order of things. If a person is marked down for death, it is quite unacceptable for a mortal to interfere. Your daughter did a very foolish thing in giving him Gorgon's blood.
Zeus frowned. There was no denying the truth of what they said. He was disappointed in Athena. Mortals were mortal and that was that. Allowing them access to potions that gave them ascendancy over death was quite wrong. The thunderbolt which struck Aesclepius was wholly unexpected. It killed him stone dead. All of Greece lamented the loss of their beloved and valued physician and healer. But Apollo did more than mourn the passing of his son. He raged. As soon as he heard the news, he took himself off to the workshop of Hephaestus in Aetna and with 3 swift arrows shot dead Brontes, Steropes and Argesh, the Cyclopes whose eternal task and pleasure it was to manufacture the Sky Father's thunderbolts. Zeus was intolerant of any threat to his authority and always moved swiftly to put down the slightest hint of insurrection. Apollo was thrown from Olympus and commanded to serve the Thessalian king Admetus in a lowly position for a year and a day. Apollo obeyed without objection and he begged his father to resurrect Aesclepius.
Zeus restored Aesclepius to life and raised him up as a god.
One evening, Loki spied Freya's marvelous necklace, Brisingamen, a golden symbol of the fruitfulness of the earth which she wore about her neck at all times. The trickster god desired this necklace, and he found he could not sleep until he had it in his possession. So, he crept one night into her chamber to steal it. The goddess's position in sleep made it impossible for Loki to reach the necklace, so he turned himself into a small flea, and bit her under the bedclothes so that she turned in her sleep. Then Loki returned to his shape, and removed the Brisingamen from Freya's neck without waking her up. Will Loki be able to keep the Brisingamen? We will find out soon, but before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more mythology videos. Not far from Freya's palace, Heimdall had heard the sound of Loki becoming a flea, a sound so slight that only the great watchman of the gods could have heard it, and he traveled immediately to the palace to investigate. He saw Loki leaving with the necklace, and drew his sword in order to remove the thief's head. Loki immediately changed himself into a thin blue flame, but quick as a flash, Heimdall became a cloud and sent down a sheath of rain in order to douse the flame. Loki quickly became a polar bear and opened his jaws to swallow the water, whereupon Heimdall turned himself into bear and attacked the hapless trickster. In haste, Loki became a seal, and then, once again, Heimdall transformed himself in the same form as Loki, and the two fought for many hours, before Heimdall showed his worth and won the necklace from Loki and returned it to Freya.
Odin's special attendants, the Valkyrs, or battle maidens, were either his daughters or the offspring of mortal kings, maidens who were privileged to remain immortal and invulnerable as long as they implicitly obeyed the god and remained virgins. They and their steeds were the personification of the clouds, their glittering weapons being the lightning flashes. The ancients imagined that they swept down to earth at Valfather's command to choose among the slain in battle heroes worthy to taste the joys of Valhalla and brave enough to lend aid to the gods when the great battle should be fought. These maidens were pictured as young and beautiful, with dazzling white arms and flowing golden hair. They wore helmets of silver or gold and blood-red corselets, and with spears and shields glittering, they boldly charged through the fray on their mettlesome white steeds. These horses galloped through the realms of air and over the quivering Bifrost, bearing not only their fair riders, but the heroes slain, who after having received the Valkyr's kiss of death, were thus immediately transported to Valhalla. As the Valkyr's steeds were personifications of the clouds, it was natural to fancy that the hoar frost and dew dropped down upon earth from their glittering manes as they rapidly dashed to and fro through the air. They were therefore held in high honor and regard, for the people ascribed to their beneficent influence much of the fruitfulness of the earth, the sweetness of dale and mountain slope, the glory of the pines, and the nourishment of the meadowland. The mission of the Valkyrs was not only to battlefields upon earth, but they often rode over the sea, snatching the dying Vikings from their sinking dragon ships. Sometimes they stood upon the strand to beckon them thither, an infallible warning that the coming struggle would be their last, and one which every Northland hero received with joy. The numbers of the Valkyrs differ greatly according to various mythologists, ranging from 3 to 16, most authorities, however, naming only 9. The Valkyrs were considered as divinities of the air. It was said that Freya and Skald led them onto the fray. The Valkyrs had important duties in Valhalla. When their bloody weapons laid aside, they poured out the heavenly mead for the Einherjar.
Yggdrasil is the world ash, a tree that has been there for all time and will always be there. Its branches overhang all 9 worlds, and they are linked by the great tree. The roots of the Yggdrasil are tended by the Norns, 3 powerful sisters who are also called the Fates. The roots are nourished by 3 wells. One root reaches into Asgard, the domain of the gods, and feeds from the Well of Weird, which is the name of the eldest Norn. The second route leads to Jotunheim, the land of the frost giants. The well at the end of this route is called Mimir, who was once a god. Only the head of Mimir has survived the creation of the world, and it drinks daily from the well and is kept alive by the magic herbs which are scattered in it. Mimir represents great wisdom, and even Odin chose to visit him there to find answers to the most profound questions that troubled his people. The third route winds its way to Filheim, and the well here is the scum-filled fountain of black water called Verdalmere. Here, the root of the tree is poisoned, gnawed upon, and from it rises the scent of death and dying. In Verdalmere is a great winged dragon called Nithog, and he sits at the base of the root and inflicts damage that would have caused another tree to wither away. And the magnificent tree stands, as it has always stood, as the foundation of each world and a point of communication between all. In the beginning there was a gaping void, Ginnunga Gap. To its south was the flaming Mossbell. To the north was the freezing Niflheim, where a spring, Overgelmere, gave rise to the 11 rivers of Elivagar. As the rivers flowed along, poisonous substances accompanying them hardened and turned to ice. Vapor from the poison froze into ice, and layer upon layer of ice increased until it had spread right across Ginnunga Gap. When the ice met hot gusts emanating from Muspel, it began to melt and drip, and there was a quickening from the drops, the first signs of life. The drops formed a giant Ymir. While Ymir slept, he sweated, and from the sweat in his left armpit 2 beings were formed, a male and a female. Ymir's 2 legs mated with each other, producing a monstrous son. These beings began the race of frost giants. Next, a cow called Odumla came into being from the dripping ice, who nourished Ymir with 4 rivers of milk from her udder. For her own sustenance, Odumla licked the salty ice stones. As she licked, by the evening of the first day, a man's hair was visible. On the second day, a man's head. and by the end of the third day a complete man had emerged. This man was called Bori. He begot a son Bor, who married Bestla, daughter of a giant called Bolthorn. They produced 3 sons. The gods Odin, Vili, and Ve, who killed the huge primeval giant Ymir. When he fell, the whole race of frost giants was drowned in his blood, except one, Bergomir, who became the progenitor of a new race of giants. Odin and his brothers then used Ymir to create the world. Carrying his enormous body out into Ginnunga Gap, they formed the earth from his flesh and rocks from his bones. They made stones from his teeth and any bones that had been broken. They made his blood into the lakes and sea. They formed Ymir's skull into the sky and set it up over the earth, placing one of 4 dwarfs, Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri, at each corner to hold it up. They created plants and trees from Ymir's hair and threw his brains up into the sky to form the cloud.
Nestled within the complex matrix of Norse legends are the apples of Idun, fruits of unparalleled magic. They are not mere apples, but symbols of youth, vitality, and the gods' reliance on the natural world. Idun, a goddess associated with youth and rejuvenation, is the keeper of these magical apples. It's her sacred duty to care for them and dispense them to the gods. With each consumption, the gods maintain their youthful vigor and vitality, keeping old age and decay at bay. The gods of Norse mythology, unlike many other pantheons, aren't inherently immortal. They are long-lived and powerful, but they face eventual decline without the apples of Idun. Thus, these fruits are more than mere nourishment. They are the essence of their continued dominance and existence.
You may have heard that Shiva, the god of destruction, uses his third eye to destruct evil, but the reason for creating it and its first use were totally different. The very same day Shiva's eye was created, his child with Parvati was born, not the usual way a child is born. The child's name was Andhaka, and he was a blind and hideous child. Later, Shiva gave Andhaka to a childless demon king named Hiranyaksha. And now let's see the story of Andhaka and its tragic ending, and how Shiva's third eye was created at first, and for which reason. What do you think was the reason for creating his third eye? Leave your answer in the comments. As we mentioned, Andhaka was given to a demon king named Hiranyaksha by Shiva. Eventually, Hiranyaksha died and Andhaka became the king of the Asura. Sometime Andhaka performed a penance in order to please Brahma, who appeared to him, and he offered Andhaka a boon. Andhaka asked to have his sight restored and to be made invincible. Brahma complied, but with the caveat that although Andhaka would be invincible, he could still be killed by Shiva. Before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more fascinating stories. And who knows, perhaps you will be offered a boon too. One day, Andhaka met Parvati. Tempted by her great beauty and without knowing she was his mother, he decided that he must have her as his wife. He pursued her, and she called for Shiva to help. He heard her cries and intervened, impaling Andhaka on his trident. As he died, Andhaka recognized that he was indeed the son of Shiva and Parvati, and apologized for the great sin of pursuing his own mother. Lord Shiva was calmly meditating. His consort, the goddess Parvati, approached in a playful spirit and covered his eyes with her hands. As she did this, all of the creation went dark and descended into chaos. Everyone was terrified, even the gods. Using his godly power, Shiva created a third eye, this one centered in his forehead. From this newly minted eye emerged a great flame that relit the darkened universe. The heat from his emergent fire caused Parvati's hands, which still covered her husband's original two eyes, to perspire. The perspiration, filled with both the power of Parvati and Shiva, fell to the ground and was transformed into a blind and hideous child, Andhaka. Parvati was repelled and horrified by the child, but Shiva counseled that, as he had been created through their contact, he was indeed their child.
Ganesha is one of the most popular gods in Hindu mythology because he's considered to be the lord of success and destroyer of evil. Ganesha was worshipped by several different religions before humans knew that they all referred to the same god. This led to him being known as the god without a beginning. Ganesha is the only god in Hindu mythology who had a human experience before becoming a god, which is something that makes him stand out from all the other deities. There are many different things about Ganesha's story that make him special, but perhaps one of his best-known attributes is that he has the head of an elephant. Ganesha has a beautiful human body, and his head is like that because he loves spending time outdoors, surrounded by nature. This makes it easy for him to create friendships with many different animals. Ganesha's head was not originally shaped like that of an elephant's. One story says that the goddess Parvati, when she created Ganesha using clay, asked Ganesha to stand guard while she took a bath. While Parvati was taking her time to bathe, Shiva came back home and was stopped by Ganesha from entering the house because he did not know that time that Shiva was his father. Shiva, who did not know that the kid who stopped him was his, got angry and cut off Ganesha's head, which made Parvati very upset. She told Shiva to fix this problem by replacing Ganesha's head with the first thing that he saw, which was an elephant. The gods were so impressed by Ganesha's commitment that they blessed him so that he became the first god that people would pray to receive anything they wanted.
Vishnu's avatars are a set of 10 different incarnations that all have a specific role to play. While he has taken on many other forms, these particular 10 were specifically designed to keep the world from being destroyed. This was the first avatar in Vishnu's history and appeared when a holy man pleaded for help because there was nothing to protect him at the bottom of the ocean except for his small wooden boat. When he asked for protection, Vishnu turned himself into a fish to guide the man to land where Sankara was performing a fire ceremony. Sankara was so impressed by this act of kindness that he decided to reward the man with moksha, or eternal peace. Vishnu's second incarnation arrived to help the gods defeat the demons. The demons were only able to be defeated when Vishnu turned into a giant turtle that was used as a mountain for them to stand on. After After defeating the last set of demons, Vishnu's third avatar manifested to save the earth from being destroyed by an army of demons who had taken over. Vishnu took the form of a boar and fought with their king Hiranyaksha while rescuing his wife. The fourth avatar of Vishnu was Narsimha, a half-man, half-lion creature who saved a man named Prahlada from his evil father. When Prahlada's father decided to kill his son, who he believed was the reincarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu, Narsimha came out of a pillar and slew him with his claws. For Vishnu's fifth incarnation, he appeared as a dwarf and tricked Bali into giving up the real earth by asking for just 3 paces of land. Each step that Bali took on this new land caused him to lose one of his own steps, which led to him losing all control over it. Parasurama was Vishnu's 6th incarnation on earth. He emerged to defeat the evil king Kartavirya, who had gained control over many of India's people with his army. Even though this fight ended in victory for Parasurama, he did end up losing an eye in the process. As the 7th incarnation of Vishnu, Rama was the hero who slew Ravana and rescued Sita after the demon kidnapped her. The reincarnation of this avatar happened hundreds of years ago in a kingdom named Ayodhya, where Rama was raised to be kind and righteous. He fought against demons throughout his entire life until he was finally able to slay Ravana and reunite with his wife. For his 8th incarnation, Vishnu decided to take the form of Krishna to help people. This god ended up becoming a prince and spending much of his life fighting against a demon king named Kamsa in hopes that he could free all of the people from being imprisoned by their ruler. Vishnu manifested as a spiritual teacher named Gautama Buddha for his 9th avatar. He came to help people discover themselves. He was an enlightened man who was able to teach others how to be at peace with all aspects of their lives and help them realize that there is no such thing as an ending, because everything can always change. For his last incarnation on Earth, Vishnu decided to appear as Kalki the horse. He is still currently living in heaven until he is eventually sent to Earth with a sword that's meant to destroy all evildoers. Once this happens, Kalki will make sure that the good people are rewarded for their kindness, while the bad people will no longer be able to commit evil deeds.
Jamadagni was a warrior sage skilled in the use of the bow. His wife, Renuka, was so devoted that she would run after every arrow he shot and collect it as soon as it hit the ground. One day, she ran after an arrow and did not return till nightfall. She blamed the heat of the sun for the delay. The furious Jamadagni decided to shoot an arrow at the sun. The sun begged for mercy and offered another solution. He gave Renuka an umbrella to protect her from his heat the next time she ran after an arrow. Renuka was so chaste that she had the power to collect water in unbaked pots. However, she lost this power when she had adulterous thoughts after watching a king make love to his wives on the riverbank. Her husband, Jamadagni, ordered his 5 sons to behead Renuka. 4 of them refused. The 5th son, Parashurama, who was an incarnation of Vishnu, raised his axe When Parashurama raised his axe to kill his mother, she ran and took refuge in a low-caste community in the hope that her priest son would not follow her there. He did follow her and swung his axe again, beheading not just Renuka, but also another woman who had tried to prevent this matricide. As he was pleased with his son's unquestioning obedience, Jamadagni offered Parashurama a boon. Parashurama requested to have his mother back. Jamadagni gave Parashurama a pot of magical water to be poured on the corpse where the head had been rejoined. In his excitement, Parashurama attached the low-caste woman's head to his high-caste mother's body, and vice versa.
In this quiz, we will answer 7 simple questions about Hinduism. Let's find out if you know the answers. Which benevolent goddess, also called Uma, is the wife of the Hindu god Shiva? Parvati. Which Hindu deity's name is translated as the Pervader? Vishnu. Which figure is the Hindu goddess of wealth and good fortune? Lakshmi. Which Hindu deity is the personification of divine authority, the ruler of the sky realm, and the upholder of cosmic and moral law? Varuna. Which Hindu goddess is the destroyer of evil forces? Kali. Who is the fire god of Hinduism? Agni. What is the name of the commander of the monkey army mentioned in the Ramayana? Hanuman. How many answers did you get right? Let us know your score in the comments below.
When this video is being made, we are preparing to enter the Year of the Dragon on February 10th, 2024. When the Chinese New Year begins, leaving behind the Year of the Rabbit. In the video, it will be explained why the Chinese New Year begins on a different date, why there are red ornaments and firecrackers everywhere, and the myth behind the Chinese zodiac. Stay tuned until the end to find out your Chinese zodiac sign. The Chinese New Year begins on the 10th of February and not on the 1st of January, because despite China adopted the Gregorian calendar, people in China resisted the change and continue to observe traditional holidays according to Chinese calendar that is a lunisolar calendar. Lunisolar calendars indicate both the moon phase and the time of the solar year. Chinese New Year is a festival that celebrates the beginning of a new year on the traditional lunisolar Chinese calendar. And the first day of Chinese New Year begins on the new moon that appears between the 21st of January and the 20th of February. And this year, the new moon appears on the 10th of February. And now let's see why there are red ornaments and firecrackers everywhere on this day. Nian is a Chinese mythological beast that lives at the bottom of the sea. On the evening before the new year, Nian ascends from the water. According to Chinese New Year myths, Nian terrorizes villages and feasts on animals and people. Villagers would run to the mountains and seek temporary shelter in order to steer clear of Nian. One New Year's Eve, a beggar came to the village to seek sanctuary. The beggar promised to provide protection from Nian in return. Eventually, an old woman accepted his offer and invited him to her house. The beggar started decorating the homes in the village, placing a piece of red Chinese New Year ornaments on doors. At midnight, Nian came to the village. It immediately stopped as soon as it saw the red papers. The monster roared in frustration. All of a sudden, firecrackers started exploding, and Nian trembled in fear. The old beggar came out, wearing red Chinese New Year clothes, to mockingly laugh at the creature as it fled the village. The villagers returned the next morning, and were pleasantly surprised that none of their homes were destroyed. From then on, before New Year's Eve, people started fortifying their homes with red ornaments and lighting up firecrackers at midnight. And now let's see the myth behind the Chinese zodiac. According to myths, the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac were selected through a race. This race is meant to create a time measurement for the people. The Jade Emperor called this race of animals on his birthday to create the Chinese zodiac. There could only be 12 winners, and in order to win, the animals had to cross a rapid current river and reach the finish line on the shore. Originally, there was a cat and a rat who hated each other with a passion. It's hard to believe that they were once friends. Cat liked to sleep late, so on the morning of registration, Rat had agreed to wake the cat up. But when the day came, Rat forgot all about his promise, and without its friend's alarm call, Cat overslept, missing its chance to sign up, which is why there's no cat in the lunar calendar. The rat was the worst swimmer in the animal kingdom, but it was smart. It discovered that the fastest way to the river is to hop on top of the ox. The generous ox agreed to carry it across the river. The ox and the rat made it to shore. The rat jumped in front of the ox and came first in the race. The ox came in second, and the tiger finished in third. All of a sudden, a loud thumping sound came. It was the rabbit. It jumped from one stone to another and was doing well until it slipped. Fortunately, there was a log floating by, and it grabbed onto that log and floated to the finish line, earning the 4th place in the race. In 5th place was the dragon, but everyone thought that it would come in first because it could fly. It told Jade Emperor that it had to stop a couple of times to help some villagers. And on its way to the finish line, it saw a little rabbit on a log and decided to give a little puff of air to help it get to shore. After the dragon, the horse came galloping towards the finish line. The sneaky snake was hidden behind the horse's foot. It suddenly appeared, and the horse was scared. The snake took advantage of this and landed itself in 6th place, and the horse landed in 7th. Soon after, the monkey, the rooster, and the sheep landed onto shore. Unlike some of the previous animals, these 3 actually helped each other to get to the finish line. The rooster found a raft, and the monkey and sheep hopped on. Working hard together through the water currents and the weeds, they reached shore. The sheep came in 8th place, the monkey in 9th place, and the rooster in 10th place. In 11th place was the dog. Even though it was a great swimmer, it was late. It told the emperor that it needed a bath, and the fresh water from the river was too tempting. Right when the emperor was going to close the race, an oink sound was heard. It was the pig. The pig felt hungry in the middle of the race, so it stopped, ate something, and then fell asleep. After it awoke, it finished the race in 12th place and became the last animal to arrive. The order of the lunar calendar follows the outcome of the race, where the rat is the first animal to start the sequence, and the pig is the last. After the pig, the sequence starts over again. The lunar calendar has been a significant calendar for China and the Chinese zodiac. Many parts of the world are also familiar with this calendar. And now, as I promised in the beginning, I will show you some tables showing the Chinese zodiac for each year, including the day each Chinese year started. In this video, we will discuss about Son Goku, the protagonist of one of the biggest manga and anime franchises, Dragon Ball, and how he is heavily inspired by a Chinese mythical character. The inspiration of Akira Toriyama to create the character of Goku came from a Chinese mythical character that is fairly popular in Chinese religion as well as popular culture. While Goku's story is one of galactic adventures and martial arts prowess, its roots can be traced back to ancient Chinese mythology and the legendary figure of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. Son Goku's inception draws deep inspiration from Sun Wukong, the central character in the classic Chinese novel titled Journey to the West, written during the Ming Dynasty by the author Wu Chenggen. The parallels between Sun Wukong and Son Goku are not merely coincidental. They offer a compelling narrative thread connecting the two tales across cultures and time. The most obvious resemblance between the two is their physical appearance. Both characters share the traits of a monkey-like visage adorned with a distinct tail. Sun Wukong, with his mischievous yet powerful nature, possesses immense strength and agility. Similarly, Son Goku, the Saiyan warrior, is known for his unwavering determination and incredible fighting abilities, growing stronger after each battle. Moreover, both Sun Wukong and Son Goku wield a magical staff. Sun Wukong's Ruyi Jingu Bang, a staff capable of changing size, is echoed in Goku's Power Pole, which possesses similar mystical properties and aids him in combat. Before we move on, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more mythology and folklore videos. Another similarity shared by Sun Wukong and Son Goku is their ability to ride a cloud for travel. Encounters with diverse allies and formidable adversaries mark the journey and adventures of both characters. Sun Wukong traveled with a group of companions including a monk, Pigsy, and Sandy, embarking on a quest to obtain sacred scriptures. Similarly, Goku's journey in Dragon Ball sees him surrounded by a colorful array of friends, each contributing their unique skills and personalities to his quest for the Dragon Balls, the source of immense power. One of the most intriguing connections between the two is the idea of transformation. Sun Wukong could change into 72 different forms, reflecting his mischievous and resourceful nature. Similarly, Goku's Saiyan heritage allows him to transform into various Super Saiyan forms, each representing a significant increase in power and abilities. The thematic underpinning of seeking self-improvement and enlightenment is prevalent in both characters. Sun Wukong's journey was not just a physical one, but also a quest for spiritual growth and wisdom. Similarly, Goku's pursuit of becoming stronger, both physically and morally, drives the overarching narrative of Dragon Ball. The influence of Sun Wukong extends beyond character traits to thematic motifs and narrative arcs. Dragon Ball's portrayal of otherworldly realms, martial arts, and supernatural elements draws from the rich tapestry of Chinese mythology. Mirroring the fantastic realms and encounters found in Journey to the West, the enduring appeal of Son Goku can be attributed to the universality of the character's essence, rooted in the ancient legend of Sun Wukong. Across cultures, generations, and geographies, the archetype of a heroic figure embarking on a transforming journey has resonated deeply with audiences.
Apart from Yan Wang, the iron-faced impassive king of hell, the creatures that immediately come to mind when thinking of the Chinese underworld are two humanoid figures with animal heads. Newtu, the ox head, and Mamian, the horse face, who are the guards of the underworld. This pair of monstrous figures are guards to the gates of hell. Apart from their animal heads, they are otherwise muscular, well-built humanoids in guards' uniforms, brandishing chains and pitchforks. The pair's existence predates their guard duties. Mamian was once a favored idol in Mawang Temple, who would occasionally become a demon-hunting warrior in silver armor. As a prefect of Bohai, Newtu was known for his care of its people and his way with their cattle. At around the same time, both honored spirits were reincarnated in human form against Newtu's wishes after centuries of pestering by Mamian to experience the human realm. In the human world, they became great friends and traveled together to the capital to sit exams. However, where Newtu worked diligently, Mamian chose easy options and used his quick wits to succeed. While Newtu pored over texts late into the night, Mamian dined with officials, praising them and offering them gifts. Both methods proved effective, and the pair gained the highest marks of the year. This made Mewtwo apoplectic with rage, causing him to beat Mamiyan once they were back in their rooms. Mamiyan calmly accepted the anger of his friend until the point that Mewtwo keeled over from exhaustion, having worked himself to death. Before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more mythology videos. In the underworld, Mewtwo sought an official to complain to. Having heard Mewtwo reciting Mamiyan's shortcomings for a full day, Yanwang, king of the underworld, ordered Mamiyan's soul to be captured and interrogated. However, upon his arrival, Mamiyan was so gracious towards the king that Yanwang turned to Mewtwo and told him that while there is talent in reading and learning, there is also much of value in observing the world and choosing your words. Mewtwo was so outraged that Yanwang had been easily manipulated like this that he forced his way into the heavenly court to complain directly to the Jade Emperor. When the Jade Emperor called in Yanwang and Mamiyan to question them, Mamiyan's explanations calmed the Jade Emperor's wrath. He declared that Mewtwo was upright and full of knowledge, while Mamiyan was flexible in mind and agile in action. Indeed, so complementary were their temperaments that the Jade Emperor ordered them to work together to assist Yanwang. As an edict of heaven, all in the court were compelled to obey the declaration, yet the King of Hell still felt the pair's animosity would cause problems. So he had Mengpo, the goddess of oblivion, prepare her broth of forgetfulness. The pair drank this and immediately forgot their human lives and the quarrel that had brought them both to hell. They also reverted to their animal-headed forms. Thus unified by their strange appearance, their friendship flourished again. It is said that in those rare times when the bridge to hell is quiet and nobody is trying to sneak in or out, the pair sit together drinking wine and playing chess.
The hermit poet Chuang Tzu was angling in the river Pu. The king of Chu sent 2 noblemen to invite Chuang to come before him. "We were hoping you would take on certain affairs of state," they said. Holding his pole steady and without looking at them, Chuang Tzu said, "I hear Chu has a sacred tortoise that has been dead 3,000 years, and the king has it enshrined in a cushioned box in the ancestral hall. Do you think the tortoise would be happier wagging his tail in the mud than having his shell honored?" "Of course," replied the 2 noblemen. "Then begone," said Chuang Tzu. "I mean to keep wagging mine in the mud."
At the very beginning of time, when only darkness and chaos existed and the heavens and the earth had not yet been properly divided up, the universe resembled the shape of a large egg. And at the center of this egg, the first living creature one day came into being. After many thousands of years, when he had gathered sufficient strength and energy and had grown to the size of a giant, the creature, who gave himself the name of Pangu, awoke fully refreshed from his long rest and stood upright within his shell. He began to yawn very loudly and to stretch his enormous limbs, and as he did so, the walls of the egg were cracked open and separated into 2 even portions. The lighter, more fragile part of the egg floated delicately upwards to form the white silken sheet of the sky, while the heavier, more substantial part dropped downwards to form the Earth's crusty surface. Now when Pangu observed this, he was happy and proud to have created some light in place of the darkness and chaos out of which he had emerged. But at the same time, he began to fear that the skies and the earth might fuse once more, and he stood and scratched his huge head, pondering a solution to the problem. And after he had thought things through for quite a while, he decided that the only way to keep the 2 elements at a safe distance from each other was to place his own great bulk between them. So he took up his position, heaving and pushing upwards against the sky with his hands and pressing downwards into the earth with all the weight of his massive feet until a reasonable gap had been formed. And when this distance between them had been established, the sky grew firm and solid and the earth became securely fixed far beneath it. Pangu then looked around him and seeing that there was no longer any danger of darkness returning to the universe, he felt at last that he could lay down and rest, for his bones ached and he had grown old and frail over the years. Breathing a heavy sigh, he fell into an exhausted sleep from which he never awoke. But as he lay dying, the various parts of his vast body were miraculously transformed to create the world as we mortals know it today. Pangu's head became the mountain ranges, his blood became the rivers and streams, the hairs on his head were changed into colorful and fragrant blossoms and his flesh was restored to become the trees and soil. His left eye was transformed into the sun and his right eye became the moon. His breath was revived in the winds and the clouds and his voice resounded anew as thunder and lightning. Even his sweat and tears were put to good use and were transformed into delicate droplets of rain and sweet-smelling morning dew.
When the universe first emerged from chaos, mankind had not yet been created, and the firmament and all the territories beneath it were inhabited by gods or giants who had sprung forth from the body of Pangu. If you want to see how the world was created by Pangu, the primordial giant in Chinese mythology, I will put the link for the video in the description below, and you can check it after you watch this video, or you can go and check it now, and I will wait for you to return here to see how Nu-Wa, the powerful goddess of Chinese mythology, peopled the earth. And now let's see how Nu-Wa peopled the earth, and keeping in mind China's population, she did a great job. Nu-Wa appeared on Earth in the company of her chosen heavenly companion, whose name was Fu-Shi. Together, these deities set out to bring an even greater sense of order to the world. Of all the other gods residing in the heavens, Nu-Wa was the strangest and most unusual in appearance. For the upper half of her body was shaped like a human being, while the lower part took the form of a snake. Nu-Wa also possessed the unique ability to change her shape up to 70 times a day, which could be very useful to spy on Fu-Shi and check his loyalty. And as far as we know, she frequently appeared on Earth in several different guises for various reasons. Although Nu-Wa took great pleasure in the wondrous beauty of the newborn world she occupied, deep within she felt it to be a little too silent, and she yearned to create something that would fill the empty stillness. One day shortly afterwards, as she walked along the banks of the Great Yellow River, she began to imagine spending time in the company of other beings, not unlike herself, animated creatures who might talk and laugh with her, and with whom she could share her thoughts and feelings. Sitting herself down on the earth, she allowed her fingers to explore its sandy texture, and without quite realizing it, began to mold the surrounding clay into tiny figures. But instead of giving them the lower bodies of reptiles, the goddess furnished her creatures with little legs so they would stand upright. Now, before we move on, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more mythology and folklore videos. Pleased with the results, she placed the first of them beside her on the earth, and was most surprised and overjoyed to see it suddenly come to life, dancing around her and laughing excitedly. She placed another beside it, and again the same thing happened. Nu-Wa was delighted with herself, and with her own bare hands, she continued to make more and more of her little people as she rested by the riverbank. But as the day wore on, the goddess grew tired, and it was then that she decided to make use of her supernatural powers to complete the task she had begun. So breaking off a length of wood from a nearby mulberry tree, she dredged it through the water until it was coated in mud. Then she shook the branch furiously until several hundred drops of mud landed on the ground, and as each drop landed, it was instantly transformed into a human being. Then Nuwa pronounced that the beings she had shaped with her own hands should live to become the rich and fortunate people of the world, while those created out of the drops of mud should lead ordinary and humble lives. I am one of those created by the drops of mud, if you are wondering. What about you? Let us know in the comments. And now back to our story. When Nuwa realized that her little creatures should themselves be masters of their own survival, she separated them into sons and daughters and declared that they should marry and multiply until the whole wide world had become their home and they were free once and for all from the threat of extinction. That was our story. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next videos.
In the past, a man owned a dog that seemed to be fascinated with the river located near their house. He ran to the riverbank every day and howled towards the water. Worried, the man followed the dog one day and asked if he was troubled. The dog turned his back and replied, "Soon, the water level will rise, and the land will be covered with water, resulting in the destruction of all entities and beings. To save them from drowning, you must build a raft and put them on when the rain starts to pour." The dog also asked the man to throw him into the water when the rain poured. To prove the legitimacy of his statement, the dog showed his back to the man. The skin was damaged and worn off, with his bone structure protruding outside. Presuming it was a definite sign of the flood arrival, the man, since he did not have much time, he just built a raft big enough for his entire family and some possessions to fit on. They also took some provisions such as food and clothing to survive on the way. The rain poured heavily for the next few days, and the water level reached the mountain peak. With time, all humans and creatures drowned in the flood, leaving the man and his family on the raft. As the water level dipped and the flood was nearing an end, the family got off the raft and settled on a mountain, alone and desolate. The family lived in solitude until they heard noises across the ridge. Someone danced and sang all day and night long. Curious, the man left his house to climb the mountaintop and discover the truth. When he looked across the other side, he found bones of dead people piled on top of each other.
This is the world we know and we live in. Could it have been created by a spider? In the Saya mythology, it could. The Native American tribe has one of the weirdest creation stories. But has the spider managed to do it by himself, or has he needed help? Has he succeeded or not? Stay until the end to find out. In the beginning, there was no living creature but one being in the lower world. This was the spider, Susistinako, this spider created two lines, one from north to south and one from west to the east. On each side of the first line, north of the second, he placed two small parcels. They were precious, but no one knows what was in them except Spider. Then he sat down near the parcels and began to sing. Two women appeared, one from each parcel. In a short time, people appeared and began walking around. Then animals, birds, and insects appeared, and the spider continued to sing until his creation was complete. But there was no light, and as there were many people, they did not pass about much for fear of treading upon each other. The two women first created were the mothers of all. One was named Utset, and she was the mother of all Native Americans. The other was Nowutset, and she was the mother of all other nations. While it was still dark, the spider divided the people into clans, the clans of the bear, the eagle, and other clans. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more crazy mythology stories like this. After Spider had almost created the earth, he thought it would be good to have rain to water it. So he created the people of clouds, the people of lightning, the people of thunder, and the people of rainbow to work for the people of the earth. He divided this creation into 6 parts, and each one had his house in a spring at the heart of a large mountain, at the top of which was a giant tree. The spider also divided the world into 3 parts: the earth, the middle plane, and the upper plane. But the earth residents built houses for themselves by digging into the rocks and land. They couldn't build houses like they do now because they didn't see. You remember, we mentioned earlier Utset and Nowutset, the 2 mothers. Yes, these 2. These 2 mothers, inspired by Susistinako, the spider, made the sun, and after they had sunbathed as typical women, they took him to the east and camped there, since there were no houses. The next morning, they climbed to the top of a high mountain and threw the sun under it. After a while, it began to rise. When people saw the light, they were happy. When the sun was far away, his face was blue. As he approached, the face became brighter. The sun lit up the world during the day, but there was no light at night. So the 2 mothers created the moon to illuminate the world at night. But the moon traveled slowly and did not always give light. Then the 2 mothers created star people and made their eyes of sparkling white crystal to shine and brighten the world at night. In the Sia mythology, a spider created the world. But in Greek mythology, the spider was created by the goddess Athena as a punishment. If you want to see the story, you can find the link in the description, or you can click on the top right corner. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next videos.
The universe was multi-layered for the Mayans, consisting of layers that spanned the underworld, middle world, and paradise. The heaven or paradise consisted of 13 layers above the earth, supported by the Bacchus at the 4 corners, while the earth rested on the back of a turtle floating in the ocean. There were 9 layers of Xibalba beneath the earth, the underworld where the evil was sent as punishment. The world tree, Siba, linked those layers together, and the spirits and even gods traveled along this tree to move between heaven, hell, and earth. A bird god named Itzamye dwells in the axis of Seba, and he is the deity that knows the secrets of all planes of existence. The 13 layers of heaven were ruled by 13 gods known as the Oxlahuntiku, while the lords of death, or gods the underworld, Xibalba, were 9 and called Bolantiku. As mentioned earlier, the Mayan priests viewed time as never-ending, consisting of major successions of cycles with no defined beginning or end. Time itself was considered holy and divine by the Mayans, and all time cycles were believed to be gods. Despite these notions, the Mayans believed the world in its current form is doomed to end in a cataclysm, as former worlds have done before it, so that a new cycle could begin. This ensures the eternal succession of cycles so that time can repeat itself. Based on this notion, Mayan priests made predictions of the future by examining the past and trying to think of how the next cycle will end.
At the dawn of creation, before mankind ever existed, the universe comprised two separate worlds. The lower world was a place of eternal darkness, peopled only by creatures of the water, while the upper world, a kingdom of bright light, was inhabited by the great ruler and his family. The goddess Athensik was daughter of the great ruler, and at this time she was heavy with child and very close to her time of confinement. She lied down on a soft mattress wrapped in a ray of light, but as soon as she had closed her eyes, the bed on which she lay began to sink through the thick clouds towards the lower world. The monsters and creatures of the great water held an emergency council to decide what should be done.
If the being from above falls on us, it will surely destroy us. We must quickly find a place where it can rest. Only the earth, which lies at the very bottom of the water, will be strong enough to hold it,
said the beaver. The beaver and the duck tried to bring the earth on the surface, but they failed. Only the turtle was strong enough to withstand such load. Finally, two birds carried the goddess safely on the turtle's back, and from that day the turtle became known as the Earth Bearer. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more mythology videos. Soon Athensik began to hear two voices within her womb, one soft and one loud. The twins entered the world in their own individual way, one bringing trouble and the other peace. The goddess accepted both and named them Hagwediu, meaning good mind, and Hagwedetka, meaning bad mind. Not long after she had given birth, the goddess passed away. The good mind took his mother's head and placed it in the sky to be the sun that lights up the world. But his brother set darkness in the west sky, forcing the sun down behind it. Then the good mind removed a portion of his mother's breast, and he cast it upwards, creating an orb capable of illuminating the darkness, and he surrounded it with stars, ordering them to regulate the days, nights, seasons, and years. He then created rivers and valleys and forests and beautiful animals to inhabit the earth. Finally, he created from dust two beings in his own likeness, and he gave them the name Iagwehawe, meaning real people. The bad mind was jealous of his brother's good work, and he brought destruction to the world, and he created lethal reptiles to injure mankind. He even tried to create a superior race of humans, but he failed, as he did not have the power of his brother, managing only to create clay figures of hideous apes. Only one thing could satisfy Bad Mind's anger: a combat to death with his brother. The combat lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. The Good Mind remembered that his brother, when they were children, was afraid of stag horns and charged at him with those horns. The Good Mind banished his brother beneath the surface of the world. He took with him many beasts he created, but some remained on the surface as servers, half human, half beasts, eager to continue his destructive work. The Bad Mind had now become known as Evil Spirit.
In Inuit mythology, the creation of the world and humanity is often depicted as emerging from the primordial sea where powerful forces of nature and supernatural beings converge. One prominent myth tells of how the first humans, known as the Inuk, were created by the goddess Sedna, who formed them from clay and breathed life into them. Sedna, who is a sea goddess or mother of the sea, is revered as a central figure in Inuit cosmology, embodying the vastness and unpredictability of the Arctic Ocean. In some versions of the myth, Sedna is betrayed by her own father, who casts her into the sea, where she becomes the ruler of the underworld, overseeing the spirits of sea creatures and controlling the availability of marine resources, crucial to the Inuit survival.
The formation of plants and animals is barely mentioned in the accounts of Cherokee mythology. However, we do know that all living creatures, when they were first born, were asked to stay awake for 7 nights at a stretch. Almost every creature managed to stay awake on the first night. Even though they tried hard, most of the animals fell asleep on the second night. As the 7th night approached, only the panther, owl, and a few other animals could keep up. As for the plants, the spruce, pine, laurel, holly, and cedar stayed awake.
Many years ago, 2 frogs lived in Japan. One lived in a ditch near the city of Osaka, while the other lived in a crystal-clear stream that flowed through Kyoto. Although neither knew each other since they lived miles away from one another, they both suddenly decided to see the world. The frog in Kyoto decided to go to Osaka, and vice versa. So, they both set off, one for Kyoto and the other for Osaka. Since neither had traveled so far before, they quickly became tired. Then they came across a mountain both were forced to climb. A long time passed before they managed to reach the top, but both were shocked upon reaching the summit of the mountain when they came across each other. For a long moment, they simply stared at one another. Finally, they started to speak and told each other about their desire to see the world. Delighted to find that there was someone like themselves who wanted to explore and learn, they decided they would find a nice place to rest for a while before continuing their respective journeys. While resting, the Osaka frog exclaimed, how nice it would be if only they were bigger so they could see each other's hometowns from the mountain to see if the journey had been worth it. The Kyoto frog told him they could do that if they stood on their back legs and stood up as they leaned on each other for support. Delighted at the idea, the frog from Osaka hopped up onto his back legs with his front legs on the Kyoto frog's shoulders. They both stretched as high as they could, holding on to one another as tight as they could so that neither would fall off the mountain. The Kyoto frog looked in the direction of Osaka, and the Osaka frog looked in the direction of Kyoto. However, they both forgot that their eyes were positioned in the back of their heads and didn't realize that they were looking at their hometowns.
Kudain are yokai who exist to bring good fortune or at least warn of dangerous events. Yokai are a class of supernatural entities and spirits in Japanese folklore. Kudan are born from a cow and resemble calves with human faces. They can speak immediately. Kudan never live more than a few days. They offer prophecies and predictions. Kudan can predict great harvests or droughts. They do not determine the events, they simply predict them. As soon as a Kudan delivers its prophecy, it dies. In this way, Kudan can at least offer people the chance to prepare in the event of something catastrophic. It is believed that Kudan predicted Japan's wars of the 19th and 20th centuries. There was such faith in both the existence of Kudan and in their word that newspapers in Japan would claim the truth of their news by saying, "as if a Kudan said." This phrase continues in the common language of Japan to this day. The power and luck of Kudan are such that people are encouraged to wear talismans bearing the image of Kudan for good luck. Hawkers and sideshow men would make Kudan mummies from stillborn calves and other animals stitched together and charge money for people to see them. People would pay a small amount to see the mummified Kudan in hopes they would get some of the luck and good fortune of the Kudan.
In today's video, we will travel to Japan to see a romantic story.
Just off the coastline of Inaba, there were a group of islands known as the Oki Islands. On one of these lived a white hare who wanted to visit the mainland. However, the channel was infested with crocodiles. One day he went to the crocodile clan and stated that the hare clan was larger than they were. The crocodiles were outraged, and the hare challenged them to prove how large they were.
"I will jump onto your backs and count you."
As he hopped from one crocodile to the other, the hare became arrogant and foolish, teasing them about how clever his plan was. Just as he was about to reach the shoreline, the crocodile snapped at him, and the hare lost some of his fur before narrowly escaping.
Before we move on, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more mythology and folklore videos.
Now on dry land, the hare encountered a group of 80 brothers, known as the Yasogami, who were on their way to meet Princess Yamaki with the hope of one of them marrying her.
"I need help to treat my injuries."
However, being wicked and cruel, they told him to bathe in the ocean and then dry off in the wind, knowing that this would cause the hare great pain. However, the youngest brother, who was incredibly kind, told the hare that he should bathe his injuries in the fresh water of the nearby river. The hare did as the youngest brother stated, then revealed himself to be a kami when he was rested and healed. To reward him, the hare told the youngest brother that he would be the one to marry Princess Yamaki, which he did.
The tale of the Hare of Inaba is one of the well-known romantic stories from ancient Japan, and even today, couples still travel to Hakuto Shrine in Tottori Prefecture to offer prayers to the white hare. Would you pray to an animal for love? Let me know in the comments below.
The realm of the dead, also known as Duat, is where Egyptians believed the dead went after leaving the surface world. The underworld has a great significance in almost all Egyptian myths since Osiris presides over it. It is also where many demons and creatures live, including the great serpent Apophis. The underworld is where Ra's solar ship passes to get to the other side and rise again as a new sun. The underworld is divided into 12 regions, one for each hour that the sun, Ra's solar ship, spent away from the sky. In itself, it is not a place of punishment or reward, but a way of the station. Despite being the domain of many demons, beasts, and foul creatures, the underworld is simply an area that the dead had to cross to stand before the assessors of Ma'at, who judged each soul. There, the final weighing of the heart decided whether the person got the punishment or the reward. The fate of the dead was decided in the Hall of Osiris. Here the god sat in judgment while the dead person's heart, the seat of human conscience, was weighed against a feather. A pure soul's heart should weigh less than the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of order, balance, and truth. Anubis made sure that everything about the balance was in its correct setting. If the heart proved heavier than a feather, the soul owning it was destroyed by the monster Amet, the eater of the dead. The souls of those who escaped destruction but lacked the words of power needed to convey them to the paradisical fields of peace, waited in their assigned portion of Tuat, the other world, for the nightly passage of the boat conveying the dead sun god and his companions on their way to rebirth. One of the texts that provided the most details as to what awaited the dead when they arrived in the underworld was the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead was an instruction manual on how to survive the underworld and reach the afterlife. The Duat was a place engulfed in deep darkness and separated from the surface world by a range of mountains. There was a valley within those mountains, and through the valley flowed a river, much like the River Nile. Many creatures and beings lived on either side of that river.
The sun god Ra was believed to be on a permanent journey between the underworld and the surface. In ancient times, this explained mornings, nights, sunrises, and sunsets. Aboard his celestial boat, Ra, along with his company of gods and the dead pharaohs, would sail across the sky each morning, bringing light and life to the Egyptians. Meanwhile, the great serpent Apophis, the primordial god out of chaos and disorder, waited trapped in the underworld, unable to give chase. Apophis had always resided within the primordial waters and thrived in the chaos since before creation. However, Ra's order brought to the world a force that opposed Apophis's very existence, which enraged the malicious serpent. So each night, the indestructible Apophis attempted to put an end to Ra and his rule. During eclipses and cloudy days, the ancient Egyptians believed that Apophis was succeeding in defeating Ra and the gods and stopping the sun's journey across the sky. Nevertheless, the morning sky was never a place of battle. The real battle between Ra and Apophis occurred every night as Ra's boat disappeared from the sky and entered the underworld, the domain of Apophis and many other demons. At the gates of the underworld, Apophis waited. One account mentions that as the sun god's solar boat neared the gates of the underworld, Apophis rose and, with his eyes, hypnotized all those on the boat, except for Set, the son of Geb and Nut, and the god of destruction and war. Set then endorsed the role of protecting Ra by fending off the serpent with his spear until they were far enough from Apophis. After that, the journey through the underworld continued, and the sun was made to shine again. Other accounts state that Ra took on the form of a giant cat and dismembered Apophis. In these tellings, the serpent regenerated every night and returned to attack Ra's boat.
In this video, we will see who is Dagda, the head of the Celtic gods, and what happened when his enemies invited him for food and when they stole his magic harp. The Dagda represents the male humans and other gods. This god was feared for his power. Dagda is referred to as the good god. The Dagda is not called good in reference to his benevolence, but in regard to his many skills in fighting, singing, games, and sport. The Celts believed that Dagda possessed super strength and appetite. This god was quite different from the other gods or goddesses. In the Celtic world, he was perceived as one of the gods that loved life and parties. Dagda was regarded as having a potbelly. He was also believed to be the protector of the Celtic land and people in times of trouble because neither men nor other deities could withstand his immeasurable powers. He was also known as the god of agriculture, life, death, seasons, fertility, druids, and magical powers. It was said that Dagda had fathered plenty of children. By description, Dagda was a giant man in appearance and character. He was known as a wise, witty, and wily god. The Dagda possessed 3 magical accoutrements. The best known was his gigantic phallic club, which had the power to kill with one blow. Although when reversed, a strike with the handle could return the dead to life. The club was reportedly so large that it needed to be dragged about on a wheeled cart. He also owned an equally large cauldron called Coir Ansic, which was always filled with whatever one desired to eat, and which could never be emptied. This cauldron housed the invincible Spear of Lugh when it was not in use. The Dagda's third and most prized possession was Dardabla, his magical harp, which had the power to bring great joy, great sorrow, or profound prophetic sleep. It was made of oak and richly decorated, and only the Dagda could get music from its strings, and the playing of this harp made the seasons come in the correct order. During the wars with the Fomorians, the Dagda sought audiences with them in order to stall their war-making plans, while the Tuatha De Danann rallied to arms. The Fomorians were no fools, and hearing of his great love of porridge, arranged to have a gigantic bowl filled with porridge into which were thrown many animals, hundreds of sheep, pigs, and cows. A guest was expected to eat all he was offered or risk a grave insult to his host, which the Fomorians were hoping for. The Dagda had the last laugh, however. He pulled out his gigantic spoon and set to work, devouring every last drop in very little time. The Dagda liked women as much as he liked food, and he went to great lengths to be with women he desired, even those who belonged to others. Zeus is not the only one, apparently. Before we see what happened when the Fomorians stole Dagda's magic harp, if you want Dagda's blessing, give the video a thumbs up. And if you don't want troubles with the Fomorians, subscribe to the channel, and you will be granted with Dagda's eternal protection. One day in the midst of a great battle, the Dagda's home was left unguarded. When some of the Fomorian chiefs and soldiers saw this, they decided to steal the magic harp. In this way, they thought, they would conquer the Tuatha De Danann. The moment they secured the harp, they knew they must run far away. So, taking their wives and children along, they fled far from the battlefield. After they had traveled a long way, they came upon an abandoned banquet hall. Certain they would never be found here, they sat to celebrate their theft and to enjoy the evening. Suddenly, in the middle of their feast, the doors to the banquet hall burst open, and there stood the Dagda, surrounded by his warriors. The Fomorian men instantly sprang to their feet, prepared to defend their great prize. "Come to me, my harp," the Dagda cried. "Come to me, oak of two meadows, foursquare and true." Hearing its master's voice, the harp sprang from its place in the center of the banquet table and swept into the Dagda's waiting hands, killing 9 Fomorian warriors on its way. Before anyone could say a word or do a thing, the Dagda swept his hand across the strings and played 3 long, solemn chords. The harp began to hum, and that sound reverberated in the great hallway. A wail, the magical music of tears. The sound was so piercing and sad. The women and children bent their heads, and soon they were weeping so hard they could not see or stand. The men, seeing their families in such despair, felt their own hearts break, and they turned to comfort them, but the music had done its magic. The Fomorians reached for their spears, but before they could throw them, the Dagda once again touched his harp, and this time the notes of the chord that rose into the air were dense with mirth, and the warriors began to laugh uncontrollably. They could not help themselves. They laughed so hard, their spears fell to the floor, and they dropped their goblets of wine so that wine spilled everywhere, staining their boots, staining the floor. They laughed until they had no strength left in their limbs, and still the chord sounded, filling the hall, filling their ears. The women, tears still in their eyes, turned to look at their laughing husbands and begin to speak. But before they could utter a word, the Dagda touched his harp once more. This time the music that rose into the air was soft and sweet, pure and good, as beautiful as joy itself. This was the music of sleep. All the Fomorians heard this sound, and no one could resist its force. The women bowed their heads and closed their eyes and fell asleep. The children crawled into their mothers' laps and curled up and slept. The men could not stay standing. They dropped into their seats and nodded off, closing their eyes, one after another, until the only sound besides the music of sleep was the sound of their snores. When the Dagda was certain the Fomorians were fast asleep and unable to move, he motioned to his warriors to depart, and they stole away, taking the harp with them, of course. Eventually, aided by the might and magic of the Dagda's harp, the Tuatha De Danann prevailed, saving Ireland from death and destruction by the Fomorians.
In this video, we will see how Halloween is connected with Samhain, an ancient Celtic celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of summer. We will see the history of Samhain and its traditions, some of which are still alive today thanks to the Halloween celebration. Are you ready? Let's get into it. The Celtic calendar is frequently referred to as a wheel, a clear allusion to the sun. This wheel was linked to the harp of the Dagda, likening the recurring seasons as a repeating story. Whereas spring and summer were the domain of innocence, youth, love, and virility, the dark half of the year was given to mysteries, wisdom, aging, and death. If you don't know who is Dagda, don't worry. You will find a video about him in the description below. You will also see in that video what happened when they stole his magic harp. Samhain was the most widely celebrated of the ancient Celtic festivals. It was a celebration of the harvest, of the closing of the year, and the beginning of the new year. Agriculturally, it was the time when the last fruits of the harvest were collected and stored, and the livestock were culled and quartered for the winter ahead. The dark time of the year had many magical and mythical associations as well. Samhain was also the time when the gates of the otherworld were thrown open, allowing the spirits of the ancestors to mingle with the living. It was at this time that the fabled wild hunt, a procession of animals, fairies, and spirits, was most often said to occur. The Samhain festival marked the transition between two very different seasons. The growth season was at an end, with the majority of crops long harvested. The time for festivals and tribal gatherings was coming to an end, and warfare and trade would be largely suspended until warmer weather returned. This was a last opportunity for merrymaking and celebration before a long winter confinement. Samhain was celebrated at the cusp of the seasons, marking the end of the light and the beginning of the dark of the year. In mythical terms, the youthful aspect of the goddess sovereignty gave way to the withered hag of winter, and the fruits and flowers of the warm season were replaced with the barren cold of winter. It was marked with a great feast at which the High King was symbolically mated with the goddess of sovereignty, a celebration that marked the Samhain night coupling of the Morrigan and the Dagda on the eve of the Battle of Magturiad. Indeed, the Samhain was a favorite time for tribal assemblies, during which all of a people would gather together for feasting, games, and amusements, and also to settle debts and disputes. In ancient times, great offerings would have been made at lakes, shafts, and the entrances to the earthen mounds, as the denizens of the otherworld would be particularly receptive. Horse races and other feats of strength were not uncommon at this time, a tradition going back to the earliest days of the Celtic peoples. Samhain was considered a time of great change. It was also a time of great transparency between the world of man and the otherworld. Samhain was a traditional time for divination and prophecy, an auspicious time for sacrifice. The transformation of the world brought about other transformations, and it was at this time one could enter the otherworld. Celtic myth tales involving otherworld magic often take place during Samhain, and now is when otherworld denizens make benevolent journeys or even warfare against the living. Samhain was the preferred day for beginning an adventure or setting out on a quest, especially a divine one. Many important events in Celtic mythology take place or begin at the time of Samhain. For example, it is at Samhain that Enga seeks to recognize his lover Caer in her swan form. If you don't know who is Engus, again, don't worry. You will find a short video about him in the description below. Before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more mythology and folklore videos. A common urban legend claims that the Samhain celebration was in honor of a ghastly god of death by the same name. Although a few minor Celtic gods have similar names, none has any connection to the Samhain festivals. Samhain was celebrated all over Ireland and Great Britain with the lighting of sacred bonfires. As in similar rituals in the north, the Samhain fires were the first fires of the season. The bonfires themselves were inaugurated by the Druids. The bonfires were not the only fire rituals associated with Samhain. A popular ritual called Lading the Witches involved a solemn candlelit procession, the purpose of which was the discovery of dark magic. If a candle flickered or died out during the procession, it meant that the person carrying it was a certain victim of witches, and special precautions would be taken to protect him or her. Other precautions would be taken as well. As the Tuatha De Danann were well known to roam the countryside, it was customary to leave gifts of milk and bread for them, not just on Samhain, but on the other festival days as well. This customary offering was sometimes referred to as the fairy tax, honoring the ancient agreement between the Milesian Celts and the denizens of the otherworld. Even after the demise of the pagan Celtic culture, Samhain remained a popular holiday, and in early Ireland it was the most important of the four great festivals. There is a common theory that floats about that the institution of Halloween by the Catholic Church was intentionally begun as an answer to the reluctance of the people to give up pagan revelries or the remembrance of the dead. Although there was a definite connection with death and passages, there isn't a lot of evidence that Samhain was held to honor the dead. Most such claims come much too late to be of any use, and the idea is never mentioned in the surviving mythological tales. It is a fair assumption, however, that in this traditional time of tribal gathering, some commemoration would have been made on behalf of the ancestors. It is known that it was sometimes customary to light torches at the entrances of the ancient tombs to make clearer the passage from the otherworld. From the earliest days of the Church, it was customary to observe a day in memorial to the saints. Later, this expanded to include all of the dead. The saints of the Church were celebrated on November 1st with a solemn mass and singing. As it was already customary to honor one's ancestors during the Samhain period, it was only natural that the Church's own observances followed suit. It became customary to visit cemeteries on this day, to sweep and clean the graves, and echoing the older custom, Lights were lit outside of homes and in cemeteries. Water and other provisions would be left out, and the doors left unlocked. The ancient tombs were not neglected either. The old custom of walking in clockwise procession 3 times about the ancient monuments carried well into medieval times. The November celebrations were eventually worn away as the popularity of the All Saints Festival increased. Within a few hundred years, the commemoration of the dead also moved from an earlier date to coincide with the November observation, so that eventually the two would be held back to back. In any case, the Christian observations were quite unlike their pagan predecessor, and by the medieval period, the feast became solemn reminders of mortality and the grisly fates awaiting the sinner. In medieval times, as during other feast days, it became customary to spend Samhain night going door to door collecting food and other offerings for the poor, often in exchange for prayers said for the homeowner. However, the Samhain ritual often involved a costumed masquerade, some say in imitation of the fairy procession. If a homeowner gave generously to these masked visitors, the visitors would make a solemn procession around the kitchen fire, a tradition that clearly echoes the ancient Samhain rituals. Were the hosts less than generous, they would be cursed in a similar manner. Neo-pagans, especially Wiccans, have embraced Samhain as their most sacred holiday, an adoption based on Samhain's importance as a celebration of endings and beginnings. The modern pagan take of Samhain is more of a composite holiday, often mingling traditions of the ancient Celts with later European practices. Samhain is generally viewed by modern pagans as a time for reflection and meditation, and a time to commune with the spirits of dead loved ones, honor one's ancestors, and prepare for prosperity or good fortune in the coming year. A typical Wiccan or neo-pagan celebration of Samhain may include memorials for the departed, visits to cemeteries, and rituals to honor ancestors. Traditional harvest goods such as pumpkins, apples, and mead are often featured. I hope you liked the video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Trick or treat.
In the olden days, the thunder and lightning lived on the earth amongst all the other people, but the king made them live at the far end of the town, as far as possible from other people's houses. The thunder was an old mother sheep, and the lightning was her son, a ram. Whenever the ram got angry, he used to go about and burn houses and knock down trees. He even did damage on the farms, and sometimes killed people. Whenever the lightning did these things, his mother used to call out to him in a very loud voice to stop and not to do any more damage. But the lightning did not care in the least for what his mother said. And when he was in a bad temper, he used to do a very large amount of damage, especially to the people who are not subscribed in the channel. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. At last, the people could not stand it any longer and complained to the king. So the king made a special order that the sheep and her son, the ram, should leave the town and live in the far bush. This did not do much good, as when the ram got angry, he still burnt the forest, and the flames sometimes spread to the farms and consumed them. So the people complained again, and the king banished both the lightning and the thunder from the earth, and made them live in the sky, where they could not cause so much destruction. Ever since, when the lightning is angry, he commits damage as before, but you can hear his mother, the thunder, rebuking him and telling him to stop.
strigoi are attributed with the abilities to transform into an animal, become invisible, and to gain vitality from the blood of their victims. The strigoi can be a living man, born under certain conditions, be the seventh child of the same sex in a family, lead a life of sin, die without being married, die by execution for perjury, die by suicide, die from a witch's curse. The strigoi are said to be bald on top of the head, do not eat garlic and onions, avoid incense, and towards the feast of St. Andrew, they sleep outdoors. Their spine is elongated in the shape of a tail, covered with hair. If there is a drought in a village, it means that there is a strigoi that prevents the rains. If it rains with stones, hail, God punishes the strigoi who does not let clean rain fall, and if it rains with sun, it is believed that one of the strigoi has been killed. The strigoi take the milk from the cows, take the manna of the wheat, the strength of the people, stop the rains, bring hail, and bring death among men and cattle. On St. George's Day, the boys water the girls so that they don't suffer from strigoi, but also so that they don't turn into these creatures. To kill them, the grave of the supposed strigoi is searched, and the order is read to him by the priests, and an oak, yew, or ash branch is struck in his heart. It is pierced with a nail or a knife to remain bound of the coffin and not being able to go out to do mischief.
Azhdaya and Zmey are two creatures that often depicted as foes, always fighting, even though they have similar characteristics, a main one being that both are basically dragons. Azhdaya are the demonic versions of the Zmey pictured in the form of overgrown snakes, which lived for more than 100 years, feeding on cattle and humans, breathing fire, and having more than one head, usually an odd number. These creatures lived in the mountains and caves and caused all kinds of havoc when they emerged, such as eruptions, hailstorms, and roaring so loud they made everything tremble. Before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more mythology videos. On the other side, there is the Zmey or Goranich, also a dragon, but is said to emerge from animals who live long between 30 to 100 years. These animals could be dogs, roosters, or horses, and the beast often takes on some of the characteristics of the animal it is connected to.
Dokaebi are goblins with devil-like faces and features and are known to cause a lot of mischief. Dokaebi like to live in isolated areas such as the deep wilderness and cemeteries. This mischievous creature enjoys playing pranks and practical jokes while rewarding good people and punishing bad ones. They love to challenge anyone to a game of sichurim, a popular form of wrestling in Korea. The trick to defeating a dokebi is to push at it from its right side, as they are very strong from the left side. It is possible to defeat a dokebi by hooking its leg, as it only has one. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more mythology videos. A dokebi also owns many magical tools and items. including Gamtu, which is the Hat of Invisibility. This tool helps them vanish when they need to, and Bengmangi, which is a spiked club used to punish sinners and to summon things magically. It is believed that Dokaebi have immense supernatural powers, can bring good harvests, big catches, and great fortunes to humans, and are defenders against evil spirits.
The god Miruk placed 4 strong copper pillars between the earth and sky and parted the world. Until this time, the earth and the sky were stuck together. The world had 2 suns and 2 moons. Miruk took one of the 2 suns and created the constellations of Ursa Major, the 7-star dipper of the north, along with other stars. He took one of the 2 moons and created Sagittarius, the 7-star dipper of the south, and other stars. He then wove hemp from arrowroot vines and made himself a monk's robe. A mouse helped him discover fire and water. The mouse told him to climb Mount Jomjong, where he was to strike a stone against pig iron to get fire. For water, Miruk climbed Mount Soha, where he found a spring. In return for its help, Miruk gave all the barns of the world to the mouse. He then created human beings from 5 golden and 5 silver bugs. The silver bugs became women, and the golden bugs became men. He made the first set of clothes from kudzu vines. Miruk's world faced a challenge for power, the deity, Seokga, who challenged him to 3 contests. The first contest involved stretching a rope across the Sea of Japan. Seokga's silver rope broke, while Miruk's golden rope helped him win the first contest. The second contest was that the deities had to connect the Seongcheon River with all the other rivers in the universe. Miruk won this contest also by calling winter ice for help. In the third contest, the deities grew a magnolia flower. When the deities slept, the flower that reached out to would be the winner. The flower reached out to Miruk, but the resentful Seokga cut the magnolia and put it in his own lap. This act angered Miruk, and he cursed the earth with numerous imperfections, including betrayal, prostitution, boastfulness, mental illnesses. Sueka imprisoned Miruk for this act. Miruk spent only 3 days in prison, after which he escaped by transforming himself into a musk deer. Seokga, along with 3,000 priests, followed Miruk and killed him. He ate the musk deer's flesh and shared it with the priests. All but 2 of the priests ate the meat. The 2 who did not follow Seokga's orders were turned into a stone and a pine tree.
A disputation that gives insight into the shaping of the world in Mesopotamian mythology is the debate between winter and summer. Is winter or summer better? Let's settle this matter once and for all. So, let's get started. Enlil, who is the Sumerian god of the air and wind, set his mind to improving the earth. He wanted to see it flourish and bloom with prosperity. He set 1 foot on the earth like a bull stomping a mighty hoof and decided the earth should have 2 seasons, winter and summer. To bring them into the world, Enlil had sex with a hill and planted into the womb of the earth the 2 seasons. When night fell, the hill opened her womb to release the seasons. Enlil nurtured them in pastures of the mountains while he designed their destinies. To summer, he gave sunlight, growth, and abundance. It was a time to build and to create. To winter, he gave the blessed rain from which all life would spring. He made it a time of plenty and rest where the toils of the summer bore fruit. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more mythology videos. Winter and summer both matured and turned their hands to their tasks. Winter filled the Tigris and Euphrates and made ponds, lakes, and lagoons. He filled the rivers with fishes and water birds. Summer made the land fertile for planting and created towns, houses, and temples. He made the plants grow and the animals thrive. Of course, as brothers often do, they began to argue about who was better than the other. They took their argument to Enlil. Enlil answered decisively, "Winter controls water, which brings life to all things. Summer, how could you be equal to this?" That settled the argument, for Enlil's judgment was never questioned. The brothers had a huge celebration, and Summer presented Winter with offerings of gems and precious metals. From then on, Summer and Winter were in perfect harmony, and the earth knew balance and symmetry. How about you? Do you prefer summer or winter, and why? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next videos.
In Maori mythology, Ringi and Papa were the two supreme creator deities. They were the source from which all things in the universe originated, including other gods, humans, and the various creatures and features of the earth. According to Maori mythology, Ringi and Papa were created from two ancient beings, Tepa and Tekore, who existed in darkness before the creation of the universe. From the beginning, Ringi and Papa were locked together in a tight and continuing embrace. Into the darkness between their bodies sprang many offspring, including numerous gods. Trapped between the bodies of their parents, the deities had little space to move around and no light to see. Weary of this situation, the offspring discussed how they could escape the confines of their existence. 2. The god of war suggested that they kill Ringi and Papa, but Tain, the god of the forests, had a different solution. Tain suggested that they make space for themselves by separating their parents. The other gods agreed with this plan, except for the wind god Tawiri, who roared his disapproval. Several of the gods attempted to separate Ringi and Papa. The first to try was Rongo, the god of cultivated plants. Although he pushed with all his might, he was unable to separate the couple. Next to try was Tangaroa, the god of the sea. He also failed, as did Haumea, the god of wild plants and vegetables, and 2, the war god. Finally, it was time for Tain to try. The god of the forests placed his head on his mother Papa, raised his feet in the air, and pushed upward against his father Ringi. Using all his might, Tain finally separated Ringi and Papa, pushing Ringi up into the sky and pressing Papa to the earth. With Ringi and Papa separated, the space between them became flooded with light. The various deities, humans, and other offspring who had been trapped there scattered into the world. Freed at last, the children of Ringi and Papa began to quarrel among themselves, especially Tain and the sea god Tangaroa. Heartbroken at being separated from his beloved Papa, Ringi cried. His tears rained down upon the earth from the sky, causing great flooding.
Tautoru was a young man noted not only for his ability as a bird hunter, but also for his ingenuity in devising a snare that was so effective that in one day he could catch so many kararu that 20 men were needed to carry them. He set scented flowers and succulent berries around the snare and attracted birds to it from far and near. With all this natural ability and resourcefulness, Tautoru remained modest and unassuming, giving thanks to Tane and reciting the appropriate karakia. It was this quality that endeared him especially to Roroha, a female spirit of the overworlds. She visited him each night and spent the hours of darkness with him, but when, accidentally or by design, he looked on her face, she was forced to leave him, for it was forbidden for mortals to gaze on her beauty. Tautoru set about his work with a sorrowful heart. He grieved for the divine woman who had been his bride. In setting his snare near the top of a tree, he became careless and fell to the ground, breaking his neck. From her home in the heavens, Roroa saw a huge company of birds gathered at one spot in the forest and knew that it must be the place where her mortal love had set his snare. Of Tautoru himself she could see no sign until she looked down and saw him lying motionless on the ground. She descended and wept over his body. When Tautoru's friends discovered him, they lifted him onto a litter and carried him through the forest. He was placed in a sitting position, dressed in rich garments. But when the bearers neared their village, the body was no longer on the litter. In some mysterious fashion, it had been removed unseen by his friends. The Tohunga declared that Tane, who had loved this young man, had taken his body to his home in the overworlds.
Sharks and, naturally, shark gods were held in high regard by ancient Hawaiians. Kamohoali'i's name means the Shark King. Indeed, he was the chief of all shark gods. Kamohoali'i, like several other shark gods, could take many forms, including the humans. He established sea caves and several inland homes in many parts of the sea. He never settled in any one place but kept traveling across the ocean and the Hawaiian Islands. He possessed superb intelligence and navigational skills. Kamohoali'i was known for his graciousness and benevolence. For instance, he would appear and guide lost ships to find their way. In return, sailors made offerings and promised not to harm sharks. According to some legends, sharks roaming the oceans around Hawaii were instructed by Kamohoali'i not to attack humans. Before we move on, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more mythology videos.
The Legend of Kamohoali'i in Kale.
Kamohoali'i's main story involves a young woman named Kale. The shark god was fascinated by her beauty and kept coming back to the Waipio River to watch her from a distance. Kale was a very talented swimmer and could dive flawlessly from the rocks above, which impressed Kamohoali'i. The shark god wasn't confident in his ability to seduce Kale in his original form, so he turned himself into a handsome man.